In the heart of the university, there was a trio everyone knew: Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius. They were inseparable, always walking together with confident steps and defiant looks. It was common to see them crossing the campus, laughing loudly and making provocative comments. "Did you see Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius today? They just didn't show up for the professor's class," remarked a third-year student to her friend as they headed to the library. She rolled her eyes. "I'm not surprised, they always do that. I wonder how they manage to keep such high grades." To everyone, it was a mystery. The trio had a freedom that no other students seemed to possess. They skipped classes, ignored assignment deadlines, but somehow still managed to get the best grades in the class. In the corridors, there were rumors that they had some sort of arrangement with the administration or even with an influential professor. "I heard Vinicius's uncle is a close friend of the director," whispered a classmate as everyone waited for the chemistry class to begin. "That would explain a lot," responded his friend Sophia thoughtfully, "but it was just a rumor." The truth was, no one had concrete proof of any illicit activities or favoritism, but the suspicions were strong, and distrustful looks always followed the trio. Besides their questionable attitudes towards classes, there was something else that united Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius: their personalities. They were all extroverted, bold, and displayed a certain superiority. Over the years, they became known as the stallions of the university, always flaunting designer clothes, imported cars, and attending luxurious parties. It was evident they came from wealthy families, and for them it seemed that money could buy everything, even the respect and admiration of their peers. In addition to their wealth and arrogance, Tiago, Eduardo, and Vinicius were known for their cruelty. They had the disturbing pastime of ridiculing those they considered inferior, whether it was a classmate with simple clothes or a professor who stood out for being different. No one was safe from their mockery. "Look at Daniel with that old backpack. I bet he found it in the trash," said Tiago, pointing at a classmate walking by. Vinicius, always ready to join in the mockery, added, "And did you see the professor trying to speak English yesterday? It sounded like she had a frog in her throat." Eduardo, the leader of the trio, burst out in loud laughter, further encouraging his friend's behavior. They moved through the campus like predators, always on the lookout, ready to attack. For many, seeing them together was reminiscent of hyenas, circling, waiting for the right moment to pounce on their prey. A second-year student confided in her friend, "It's unbearable. They act like they own the place. Yesterday, Tiago threw my book on the ground and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world." Her friend agreed. "And the worst part is they know they can get away with it. It seems like no one has the courage to stand up to them." The general feeling was one of frustration and helplessness. It was clear that something needed to change, but many wondered why no one confronted the trio. They seemed untouchable, and what was even more alarming, they were fully aware of it. With this certainty, they felt free to offend, ridicule, and even physically intimidate anyone who crossed their path. The university had become their personal playground, and everyone else was just a piece in their cruel game. The campus was always buzzing with the antics of Vinicius, Tiago, and Eduardo. However, from time to time, someone would rise up to challenge the trio's tyranny. One sunny afternoon, Andre, a newly transferred student, decided he would no longer be a victim. Seeing Tiago knock a classmate's books to the ground, he approached with a determined look and said, "Why don't you try that with someone your own size?" Andre helped the classmate pick up his books, and Tiago, surprised to be confronted, looked to Vinicius and Eduardo for support. Eduardo shrugged with a sarcastic smile and responded, "Who are you to tell us what to do?" Unfazed, Andre retorted, "I'm someone who believes in justice and respect, and you three could learn something about that." Despite Andre's bravery, his attempt to confront the trio didn't have the immediate effect he had hoped for. They ridiculed him, making jokes about the campus hero. However, something changed that day. People began to notice Andre's courage and started to wonder why no one else had challenged the trio before. The resignation that had once dominated the atmosphere began to dissipate, and a new hope started to emerge among the students. Many eagerly awaited the day when the trio would graduate and leave the university. Until then, though, a seed of resistance had been planted, and like all seeds, with time and proper care, it began to grow. At the start of the semester, the Department of Advanced Technologies and Design welcomed a new student named Brenda. With long brown hair, expressive eyes, and a confident posture, she stood out in a subtle way. Her clothes were simple and practical, contrasting with the sophistication of many of her peers. Her shoes were basic, her bag bore no famous brand, and her attire, though well-kept, didn't attract attention. Rumor had it that Brenda came from one of the most prestigious schools in the country, known for producing great professionals, but looking at her, few would imagine her background. As Brenda made her way to her first class, Eduardo, Vinicius, and Tiago, always on the lookout for a new target of ridicule, observed her from a distance. With a sarcastic smile, Eduardo commented, "Look at the newbie. She looks like she borrowed her clothes from her great-grandmother. I bet she's from the countryside, maybe from a farm. Her parents probably spent everything to get her here. She's probably on a scholarship." Tiago, always ready to join in the jokes, added, "And I bet her town is so remote it doesn't even have internet. She probably thinks Wi-Fi is some kind of food." Satisfied with their remarks, they laughed, not realizing the big mistake they were making by judging Brenda based solely on her appearance. Brenda, on the other hand, continued on her way, ignoring the comments and focusing on her goal of learning and excelling at the university. Upon hearing the cruel words, she felt a mix of indignation and pity. She stopped, took a deep breath, and slowly turned to face the trio. Her eyes shone with determination, and with a firm voice, she said, "You know, it's better to be seen as a simple, authentic, and genuine girl than to be just an empty package covered in labels. You hide behind your parents' money, but what do you really have inside? What's left when all that superficiality is stripped away?" She took a step forward, moving closer to Eduardo, and continued, "The world has a curious way of surprising us, and the wheel of fortune turns for everyone. Today you're on top, but tomorrow, do you really believe that this arrogant attitude and toxic behavior will sustain that?" The room fell into absolute silence, with all eyes fixed on the scene. The students, who had felt oppressed by the trio for so long, now watched as someone confronted them directly. When Brenda finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause and whistles. Many students stood up from their seats, clapping for Brenda's courage and eloquence. The trio, on the other hand, seemed stunned and speechless. For the first time in a long time, Brenda's response resonated throughout the room, leaving an indelible mark. The trio, who had always considered themselves invincible, were now disarmed and exposed. The looks that had once been full of fear and submission now shone with a new light of respect and admiration for Brenda. Vinicius, trying to keep his composure, muttered to Tiago that it was a low blow and that she had no right. Tiago, still dazed, replied, "She may have caught us off guard now, but we won't let this slide." Eduardo, the most affected by Brenda's response, felt his face burn with shame. As he looked around, he realized that the dynamics had changed. "She'll regret this," he whispered more to himself than to his friends. Though the trio tried to maintain an air of indifference, it was clear that they were deeply wounded. They weren't used to being challenged, let alone publicly humiliated. In the following days, as Brenda continued her academic journey with dignity and grace, the trio gathered in secret, plotting something. They couldn't let that affront go unpunished. Eduardo, still resentful, said, "She may be the sensation of the moment, but that won't last long. We need to put her in her place." Vinicius, eagerly rubbing his hands, added, "Yes, she needs to learn that she can't just humiliate people like us and get away with it." Tiago, always calculating, said, "Let's act smart. We need to do this the right way without rushing." Brenda, with her strong and determined demeanor, quickly became a prominent figure at the university. It wasn't just her courage in standing up to the feared trio that made her stand out, but also her academic dedication and the way she conducted her life with dignity. The library became Brenda's refuge, where she spent hours studying and taking notes late into the night. Did you see Brenda's grade on the last exam? She outperformed all of us. A classmate remarked to her friend. And that's not all, her friend replied. She was also chosen to represent our university in an international design competition. She's truly amazing. The professors also began to notice Brenda's talent. During a meeting, one of the professors commented, "Brenda has a brilliant mind. She not only grasps concepts quickly, but also has the ability to apply them in innovative ways." While Brenda reaped the rewards of her effort and dedication, the trio was plotting something in the shadows. Eduardo, with a resentful look, stated, "She may be on top now, but that won't last." As Brenda continued to excel, the trio secretly devised plans, determined to regain their position and make Brenda pay for her boldness. She, in turn, was focused on her future, unaware of the danger approaching. On a cloudy afternoon, the trio gathered on the terrace of a sophisticated cafe overlooking the bustling city center. Eduardo, with a cunning look, laid out his plan, emphasizing each word to ensure his friends understood the brilliance behind his idea. "Listen," Eduardo began. "We're going to play a game of charm and cunning. We'll pretend that what happened is in the past and adopt a new positive image. I'll invite her to my 25th birthday party, which will be held at the most upscale restaurant in town." Vinicius, with a sarcastic smile, interrupted. "And let me guess, you think she'll show up in one of those simple and mismatched dresses, while we'll all be impeccably dressed in designer clothes?" "Exactly," Eduardo exclaimed. "And when she's there, out of place, we'll film every embarrassing moment and share it on social media. She should never have crossed our path." Tiago, always more cautious, asked, "And what if she suspects something? What if she doesn't show up?" Eduardo, confident, replied, "She'll come. We'll make her believe that we're really trying to make amends, and she'll never suspect a thing." Vinicius laughed, imagining the scene in his mind. "This is going to be epic. She thinks she can challenge us, but we're going to show her where she belongs." Despite his initial reservations, Tiago couldn't help but get excited about his friend's idea. It will be the perfect payback. She'll never see it coming. The trio raised their glasses, sealing their devious plan as the city below continued its frantic pace. Unaware of the plans being set in motion, Brenda carried on with her life, oblivious to what was coming. Eduardo, ever meticulous, had already reserved the renowned restaurant, located in the heart of the city's most elegant neighborhood. With a panoramic view and a luxurious ambience, it was the perfect setting to put their plan into action. "I've already sent out the invitations via email and social media to everyone," Eduardo announced, showing the guest list on his tablet to his friends. "But for Brenda, I thought of something more personal." The next day, Eduardo, impeccably dressed in a suit, approached Brenda in the university garden, holding a gold envelope. "Brenda," he began, in a gentle tone, "I wanted to personally give you the invitation to my 25th birthday party. It would be an honor if you could come. We've had our disagreements, but maybe this is a chance to start over." Surprised, Brenda looked into Eduardo's eyes for a moment, searching for any sign of malice, but all she found were seemingly sincere expressions. "Well, Eduardo, I'm flattered. I'll be there," she replied, accepting the invitation with a cautious smile. What Brenda didn't know was that she was about to walk into the trap the trio had carefully set for her. As she walked away, thinking about what to wear for the occasion, Eduardo watched her, a triumphant smile spreading across his lips. He then quickly sent a message to Tiago and Vinicius. She accepted. Phase 1 complete. The trio's meticulous plan was in full swing, and they were confident that Brenda would be the laughingstock of the party. However, they were about to learn that appearances can be deceiving. What the trio ignored was that behind Brenda's simplicity lay a rich and complex story. Her parents were not the humble farmers they imagined, but renowned intellectuals. However, to the privileged trio used to measuring people by the size of their bank accounts, this mattered little. What's an academic title compared to a stuffed bank account? Tiago used to say, echoing the group sentiment. Vinicius, laughing, would comment, "Whether you're a PhD or a truck driver, to me they're all the same. What matters is what you have in your pocket, not in your head." Blinded by their arrogance and prejudice, they continued to underestimate Brenda, unaware of how mistaken they were. Intent on capturing what they believed would be Brenda's humiliation, the trio invested heavily in technology. They hired a professional team to install high-definition cameras at strategic points in the restaurant, ensuring that everything would be broadcast live on major social media platforms. "This is going to be epic." Imagine her face when she realizes the whole world is watching her humiliation, exclaimed Vinicius, rubbing his hands in anticipation. Tiago, observing the equipment, commented, "Nothing but the best to record our triumph, right?" The week seemed endless to them. Their anxiety grew with each passing day, and their thirst for revenge only intensified. They could hardly wait for Saturday, the day they believed they would reclaim the respect and status they thought they had lost because of Brenda. On the day of the party, dressed impeccably in designer suits, the trio made a grand entrance at the restaurant, arriving in a specially rented red convertible. They disembarked under the watchful eyes of the guests who were already beginning to arrive. "Let's make sure everything is working perfectly," Eduardo said discreetly, checking the cameras and signaling the technician to start the live broadcast. As the first guests entered the restaurant, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Everyone was eager to see what the night would bring, and the confident trio could hardly wait to set their plan in motion. As the dining hall filled up, Eduardo, with a glass of champagne in hand, moved gracefully among the groups, receiving warm greetings and luxurious gifts. However, his eyes were always on the entrance, looking for signs of Brenda's arrival. Vinicius, noticing Eduardo's anxiety, remarked, "She's probably getting ready. You know how it is, women always take a little extra time to prepare." But Tiago, the most skeptical of the group, let out a sarcastic laugh. "Or maybe she realized how out of place she'd be at a party like this. I bet the country girl got scared of being the center of attention and decided to stay home to avoid further embarrassment." Eduardo, trying to maintain his composure, took a sip of his drink and said, "Maybe you're right, Tiago. Maybe she realized she doesn't belong in this world and decided to spare us her presence." However, deep down, Eduardo felt a twinge of disappointment. He had meticulously planned every detail of that night, and Brenda's absence threatened to ruin everything. The evening was already in full swing when the sound of a powerful engine caught everyone's attention. A long, imposing black limousine began to glide slowly toward the restaurant's entrance. The city lights reflected off the limousine's gleaming surface, creating an almost enchanting effect. Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius exchanged curious glances, surprise evident on their faces. "Who on earth arrives in a limousine at my party?" Eduardo muttered, more to himself than to his friends. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The guests paused their conversations and turned their attention to the vehicle. The silence was almost palpable. Then, the limousine door slowly opened, revealing a pair of elegant high heels. Brenda emerged, stunning, dressed in an outfit that shimmered under the restaurant lights. The fabric, subtly draped, accentuated her curves, and the sophisticated design exuded haute couture. Her hair, once simple, was now styled in soft waves that framed her face. At her side, a young man with a firm posture and confident appearance stepped out of the car, dressed in an impeccable suit. He offered his arm to Brenda, and together they walked toward the entrance. Eduardo was dumbfounded, barely able to recognize the young woman he had tried to humiliate. Brenda, with a radiant smile, approached and handed him an elegantly wrapped gift. "Happy birthday, Eduardo," she said in a soft yet firm voice. Eduardo took the gift, still in shock, and as he opened part of the wrapping, he saw the glint of a prestigious brand's watch. His eyes widened. How did you get this? I thought you were, well, you know, he stammered, visibly unsettled. With a playful smile, Brenda let out a contagious laugh, catching the attention of some nearby guests. Then, she looked directly into Eduardo's eyes and, with a hint of sarcasm, replied, "Oh, Eduardo, who told you I come from a humble family? Was it because of my simple and modest clothes? I choose to dress this way because, to me, flaunting wealth is in extremely poor taste. Just so you know, my father is the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, and my mother, well, she's the dean of this university. But I prefer to keep my personal and academic life separate. I don't like to flaunt my background, unlike certain people around here." The silence that followed was deafening. Tiago and Vinicius were speechless, their faces displaying a mix of surprise and embarrassment. The arrogance that once emanated from them had been replaced by a look of shock. The guests around them exchanged amused glances and began murmuring among themselves. The trio's attempt to humiliate Brenda had failed spectacularly, and now they were the center of attention, but for completely different reasons than they had planned. Without a doubt, they had become the laughingstock of the night. In a corner of the restaurant, Alex, the young man accompanying Brenda, was chatting animatedly with some guests. His well-tailored suit and designer shoes highlighted his wealth, but it was his charisma and intelligence that truly impressed. Known in the business world for his sharpness and ability to close million-dollar deals, Alex had an 8-figure investment portfolio. "Did you know that Alex has business partnerships with the parents of those 3? Whispered one guest to another, discreetly pointing at Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius. Noticing the glances directed at him, Alex approached the trio and, with an ironic smile, said, "Eduardo, Tiago, Vinicius, it seems our contracts are going well, aren't they?" The trio, still recovering from the earlier shock, now faced the fact that Brenda's boyfriend was not only wealthy but also had direct influence over their own futures and their family's businesses. I didn't know you all knew each other," stammered Eduardo, clearly uncomfortable. "There are many things you don't know," Brenda replied, intertwining her arm with Alex's. And as if the universe were conspiring against them, the trio soon realized that the cameras they had installed to capture Brenda's supposed humiliation were, in fact, broadcasting their own embarrassment live to the entire university. Their plan not only failed, but now they had become the target of everyone's laughter. Meanwhile, Brenda and Alex, immersed in their own bubble of happiness, laughed and danced, celebrating the love they had shared for years. In the farthest corner of the restaurant, Eduardo, Tiago, and Vinicius retreated, trying to hide from the critical glances of the guests. The atmosphere around them was heavy, and the silence between the 3 was deafening, each lost in their own thoughts about the humiliation they had endured. "I can't believe this happened," murmured Tiago, looking at the floor. "This is a nightmare," responded Vinicius, with a distant look. Eduardo, the birthday boy, just sighed deeply, feeling the weight of his actions. "We really underestimated Brenda," he admitted. The next morning, the campus was buzzing with gossip and laughter. Social media was flooded with videos and memes from the previous night, and the trio's humiliation became the most talked about topic. Brenda was hailed as a hero who had finally put the arrogant playboys in their place. "Did you see the video? They were completely lost," exclaimed one student. "Brenda is amazing. She really showed them," said another. Under the pressure and shame, the trio had no choice but to publicly apologize. In an act of humility, they gathered in the university's central courtyard, in front of a crowd of students, and apologized for their behavior. "We are truly sorry for everything we did," said Eduardo, his voice trembling. "We were wrong, and we hope everyone can forgive us." Always gracious, Brenda accepted the apology and, in a gesture of kindness, extended her hand in reconciliation. "We all make mistakes," she said. "What's important is to learn from them and grow as individuals." In this way, the university learned a valuable lesson about humility, forgiveness, and the true meaning of character.